I'm here because we live in the richest nation in the world. Perhaps the richest nation ever in the history of the world. And yet, we live in a world which is filled with people who are beyond poverty, who are in extreme poverty. And so I think that's why we're all here. Whether we're religious leaders or whether we're government leaders, we know that the words of Scripture, to those to whom much is given, much is required. And we know that we in this nation have been richly blessed. And so we are required to do this work.
Gracious God, we gather here this morning to thank you for the strength that you have given us. We've gone through this fast together. Though only a symbol of the starvation which ends the lives of thousands each day, it is a sacred act of concern for them. Bless this bread. Through us may it feed the starving people of the world and bring to them and to us your food. And now as I pass this bread, please break off a piece and hold it until all have been served. Let us eat and be filled with the strength of God and the purpose of
God. In 2000, one of my staffers walked in and said, "There's a gentleman out in the office that would like to talk to you." After we talked for a few minutes, he asked me if I would fast for one day. Now, how do you look into the eyes of someone that's been fasting for 47 days and tell them you can't do it? Reverend Duncan is a little older, he's a little weaker than he was in 2000. But because of him, and I think it's a picture of contrast, because of his weakness, there are little boys and little girls today that are a lot stronger. His weakness and his infirmity they fed on that. It's given them strength.
You just heard the simple part of why we're here. The people who desperately need us, those are the people that American Jewish World Service is privileged to work with around the world. The people who are desperate for those schools without fees, those health clinics that they can actually use, those additional teachers, those inoculations that will allow them to proceed through their lives. And we know that every child educated one more year, every dollar spent on healthcare radically changes the prospects for the communities in which we work and for the countries of which they are a part.
Debt relief works, and I'm here to provide testimony on the impact of debt cancellation in Tanzania. We were able to abolish school fees, and immediately there was a 50% increase in primary school enrollment between 2004 and 2000 and 2004. An additional 2.7 million kids went to school, raising the gross enrollment rate from 77.6% to 106.3%, and the net enrollment rate from 58.8% to 90.5%. Today, the net enrollment rate is over 96%, and gender parity has been attained.
With the continued support of civil society organizations and the growing zeal of parliamentarians, we are certain that we shall deliver the laws that will make irresponsible borrowing and abuse of national resources a thing of the past. We are determined to stop corruption and its associated vices of bribery, nepotism, and plunder of the national economy. I appeal to all parliamentarians globally to exert pressure on our governments to deliver on the United Nations MDGs. In addition, I urge members of the United States Congress and the Senate to support the Jubilee Act on responsible borrowing and expanded debt cancellation.
The Jubilee Act now has 68 co-sponsors, and 21 of them were added since the 40-day cancel debt fast began. Thanks to the commitment of Jubilee members and supporters, the Jubilee Act can no longer be ignored.
We're very pleased to announce that when the Senate convenes this morning at 10 a.m., Senators Casey, Lugar, and Dodd, joined by Senators Biden, Obama, and Sununu, will be introducing the Senate counterpart version of the Jubilee Act.
I work for Senator Lugar on his Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff, and he's very delighted to be supporting the Jubilee Act and to be working closely with Senators Casey and Senators Dodd on this legislation. He sees it as an important part of his development assistance vision. Debt relief, of course, cannot cure the problem of poverty. It is one tool. The other efforts that he's been making at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee are on multilateral development bank reform, because it's important to get the loans right in the first place.
In a sense, we have the easy job. We're the ones who can just introduce a piece of legislation. Most of you have done all the research, you've done all the advocacy, you've traveled around the world, you've spent an entire lifetime advocating, and all we have to do is introduce the bill. So thank you to all of you who are part of Jubilee, who are part of what my boss always calls sort of the great American patriotism, the great American spirit. This is something that we can do. There are so many problems that we can't fix, and this is one that we can start to fix through what is pretty much a very straightforward proposal.
There's a real spiritual energy to Jubilee that I think has empowered this entire movement. Back in '94, John Paul called Catholics to that. All kinds of people of goodwill in many religious traditions, and with no religious tradition at all, responded to that call. It was a remarkable time for us. It has been remarkable years. Like the spiritual discipline of fasting that we observed prior to today, which reminds us of our dependence on God and our solidarity with the hungry, the spiritual energy of Jubilee reminds us that the goods of the earth belong to all, and that then leads us to restore social justice. Together we have accomplished a great deal, and I'm convinced with God's spirit of Jubilee we will accomplish what remains to be done. Thank you.